It was Easter Sunday last week. Now the same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" And they stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleophas, asked him, "Are you the only one living in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in the word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and the rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death. They crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since that took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see." He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets had spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and enter into his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village where they were going, Jesus acted as if he was going farther, and they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it's nearly evening, the day is almost over." And he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, gave it to them, and their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. And they asked each other, "Didn't our hearts burn within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem, and there they found the 11 and those who were with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." And then the two told what had happened to them on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke bread. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood in the midst of them and said, "Peace be with you." They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. And he said, "Why are you troubled? Why does doubts rise in your mind? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. And while they were amazed, he said to them, "Do you have anything to eat?" And they gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He said to them, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms." God bless the word that we hear.
Ramsey.
I would do this more often, but a good accompanist is a hard thing to find. I found one today. O Master, let me walk with thee. Help me, the slow of heart, to move by some clear winning word of love. Teach me the wayward feet to stay and guide them in the homeward way. In hope that sends a shining ray far down the future's broadening way, in peace that only thou canst give, with thee, O Master, let me live.
I'm indebted to the late Peter Marshall for some of my thinking in the next couple of minutes. Some of you may remember Peter Marshall, or you may have seen the movie A Man Called Peter, and some years ago. Seeing beyond the ordinary. I thought about demonstrating that, but I chose not to because I didn't want to mess up my hair. But if you looked at here, you would see a black tie. And what you don't see is, if I took this off, is that there's a couple of fellows here on the bottom of the tie witnessing the ascension of the Lord. Seeing beyond just the ordinary. If you had been with Mary Magdalene a week ago as she went to the tomb, you would have expected to have seen a dead body in a tomb, in a grave, and nothing more. But that wasn't what she saw. When she went beyond the ordinary, it was still dark, and, that kind of created a little bit of a scene, yes, but that's not all of it. Because when she looked, there isn't anybody. And then when she asked the gardener, you remember that? If you've taken his body away, tell me where you've laid him so that I can take him. Now, what in the world she wanted to do with his dead body, I don't know. Do you? It's like the little boy whose cat died. You've heard the story? And his father, trying to console him, said, your cat went to heaven. And the little fellow said, what in the world does God want with a dead cat? Now, and I guess I would really say, what in the world would God want with a body, even if it was Jesus Christ? Okay? Look beyond the ordinary and see something way greater than a dead body in a grave. Well, you notice these guys, they're not paying attention even to the guy who walks up beside them and walking along. And he asked that question, what were you talking about? And they said, don't you know what's happened? And he said, what? And one of the greatest experiences of my life is to read that Emmaus story some years ago and realize what it said. Jesus told him he went back to Moses, back to Genesis, and told him all things in the scriptures that pertain to him. And the Old Testament is full of it. I keep making discoveries all the time. And it's amazing. And, they are concerned about Jesus' death. They can't get it through their minds that there's anything beyond death. I've had to go through this too, and I had to come to some conclusions. But Jesus had already told them, if they would have listened, in my Father's house are many mansions or rooms, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, you can be also. You will be also. And as I worked through this with family members, and death is going to come to all of us unless the Lord comes back quickly before that. Then I worked through that and said, wait a minute. If I look beyond the ordinary of the cemetery, like Paul said, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, that makes Easter come alive. Because we don't bury the soul in a grave, in a cemetery. Only the body. And it's okay to be honorable and all of that with the body. But don't just focus your attention on that. You see what I mean? And when these fellows, they didn't know that Jesus, who he was, but they come to that time when he broke the bread and they look. I don't know if they saw the nail prints in his hands or what they saw, but their eyes were open and they said, it's Jesus. My dad told Mother, and he died on his 58th birthday from injuries. He said, I'm going to wind everything up in a couple of days, and everything is all right. He did die 2 days later. And I believe he knew exactly that all thing is going to be all right. And when at the funeral, it was almost like Dad was saying, that's my body in the casket, but it's not me. And he's absolutely right on that. You can't bury the human soul in a cemetery. Looking beyond the ordinary. Looking beyond the pain and suffering and all of this. You know what it's like. I spent some time over at Stanleytown Rehab yesterday, late afternoon, and I didn't get around. I got to go back over and see them more. But do you know? There's hope, friends. Look beyond the cemetery and see the life. He lives. You ask me how he lives? He lives within my heart. And that assurance, somebody said, well, I don't know if I'm saved or not. Do you know Jesus Christ? And do you have him in your heart? Well, if you do, don't worry about the rest of that. That's what's important. These men, when they finally saw this, who he was, he got up and they ran. I'm sure they ran. I'll bet you they were just about out of breath when they finally get to back to Jerusalem to tell the guys, hey, guys, he really is alive. He really did live. Do you know, when we as Christian believers come to that place where you said, hey, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And how long does it take to make that exchange? In the twinkling of an eye. I was just thinking a minute ago while I was sitting here, it's springtime coming now, and we plant seeds. You don't expect them to come up, I hope. No, that's silly. Of course we expect them, because we believe that there is life in that seed, and it will activate in the sunshine and the moisture in the soil. You see what I mean? Look beyond the ordinary. This morning when I went out to get the paper, and it was just a bit early, I looked up and saw the Big Dipper. I don't know when I've ever seen it more beautiful back in the northwest sky. Beautiful. But you know what I thought? That's ordinary. You see those arrangement of stars. But look beyond the ordinary. God made that. He not only made it, he knows where it is. He knows all about those. He knows those stars by name, all of them that I can see and more too. Look beyond the ordinary and see some fantastic things. It's like my good friend, Sidney Nash. His widow is traveling with me this morning. God said to Sidney one day, he said, Sidney, I'm going to put you on your knees. 2 weeks later, Sidney's down on his knees trying to take this tiny little flower, picture of this little flower, and God says, Sidney, I told you I was going to put you on your knees. Looking beyond the ordinary. That's what God is doing to us, and He's inviting us to look beyond the ordinary. He's in control. He's powerful. He's able to do all these things. You know that. I know that. All we need to do is to practice it. And I found a little book some time ago. It's only a couple hundred or so years old, and this is it. Listen carefully. Rejoice, believers in the Lord. The hope that's built upon His word can never be overthrown. Though many foes beset your road, and feeble is your arm, your life is hid with Christ in God, beyond the reach of harm. Weak as you are, you shall not faint, or fainting shall not die. Jesus, the strength of every saint, will aid you from on high. And though unperceived by mortal sense, faith knows He's always nigh. A guide, a glory, a defense, then what have you to fear? And surely as He overcame and triumphed once for you, so surely that love His name shall triumph in Him too. Because we look beyond the ordinary. The grave is not just empty, He's alive. Amen.